Global finance, topic 2, copyright Lou Gaddis. Exchange rates, quotes, transactions, and appreciations. Enjoy. All right. So let's start from the basics. This is my favorite commodity in the world, called a latte. Pumpkin spice latte came out this week. Latte, small latte costs about $3.30. That's a direct quote for an American for this commodity called a latte. All right. If I took 1 over 330, I get 0.303. So I could quote the price of that as 0.3. I can exchange 0.3 lattes for $1 US. That would be an indirect quote for an American for a latte. All right. Fortunately for all of us, these are all quoted in direct terms. Dollar price of 1 latte, not the latte price of $1. All right. So that's one commodity. This is just another commodity. It's called €1. Euro is quoted in direct terms, say $1.10 per euro. But I can flip it and say 1 over 110, and I can quote it that I can buy $1 US for 90 euro cents. That would be an indirect quote for a euro for an American. $1.10 is a direct quote for a euro for an American. Right? Another way of thinking about it is 0.9 euros per dollar is a direct quote for $1 for a European. Right? So a direct quote for a European is the European price of all goods. Fortunately, the euro is quoted in direct terms, just like a latte, as well as the pound, New Zealand dollar, Australian dollars are generally quoted in dollars, but the rest are quoted like the Danish krone or crown. So this is another commodity called the Danish crown or krone. You can use either word. It's about 16 cents to buy one of these crown, right up there. It's 1 crown, that's 2 crown, that's 5 crown. All right, now if I took 1 over 16 cents, that direct quote, I get 6.25. In other words, it costs 6 crown to buy $1 US. That's an indirect quote for a crown for an American. Unfortunately, all the other currencies in the world are indirect quotes than the ones listed on the last page. So, the Japanese yen, and the Canadian dollar, and the Mexican peso, and the Chinese yuan, the South African rand, and the Indian rupee, and the shekel are all quoted in indirect terms. And that kind of creates a lot of problems. All right?
Yeah. Just curious, is that just historical because those currencies were around first? And
I haven't figured the answer.
The values
I haven't figured the answer to that. One has got to be the values, right? Just because it's a lot easier to quote 100 yen than a penny per yen. I'm sorry, 100 yen per dollar than a penny per yen. But why those? I don't know. That's a good question.
I guess in the perspective of if you live in a country in the European Union, is it the inverse? Like, meaning?
Well, this is.
Or do they flip it themselves? You know what I mean?
I think this is the general terms, even if you're in London.
So for them, the euro is on an indirect quote to the U.S. dollar.
I only say that because they generally all use Bloomberg, and that's just what you see. They're probably all using Bloomberg and Reuters, and that's just how they present it. But you could take Bloomberg and Reuters and actually change it and just make the euro the base of everything. It's just customarily how you see it. And it's just easier to read that way, especially for currencies that are worth little relative to the dollar. Every currency has a little symbol, right? The little dollar sign or the little E for the euro and the pound and all that kind of stuff. Or here's the shekel, which I don't think I want to write that. It kind of looks like an N and a U together there. However, in the real world, the financial world, everything just has a 3-character code. So EUR, USD, GBP will be the dollar, the euro, the pound. All right, so if you want to click in this spreadsheet, you'll get every single currency code in the world. So that's how we actually tell currencies, is through these codes. Now, what gets confusing, well, not confusing, is the financial world makes things less confusing by using those codes. However, every exchange rate needs 2 codes, right? It's kind of obvious once you think about it. Right? If I need the price of a euro, I need the dollar price of the euro, so that's USD and EUR. But I can also get, say, the euro price of a pound. So I need the euro and the pound. So how do we represent that in the world if you just put the 2 codes together? All right? And if you want to know what the price of a pound is in dollars, GBP is the pound, that would be the dollar price of the pound. Say $1.30 per pound. Now, how you write that in all the systems, I either do it just this way, or this way, or this way. They'll just kind of throw them together. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a dash or a slash, or they smash them together or put a space. It all means the same thing. But the order matters. The first code is called the base currency. The second code is called the quote currency. So, if I wanted to write the price of a latte in dollars, I'd write it this way. It's the dollar price of a latte. So the base currency it's basically saying you're about to get the price of this, quoted in this. So this is the price of a pound quoted in dollars, but it could be this. That would be the euro price of a pound. Okay, so both of these are the price of a pound. One's quoted in dollars, one's quoted in euros. But one other way of thinking about it is put the symbol next to the second one. You're about to get a price quoted in dollars for this. You're about to get a price quoted in euro for this. That's how the world works. So, this is the dollar price of the euro, the dollar price of a pound. Now, all of these are indirect quotes. This is the Swiss franc. CHF is the only one that's really confusing. The Swiss franc is the CHF. It's the Swiss franc price of a dollar, Swedish kroner price of a dollar, Danish kroner price of a dollar, Norwegian kroner price of a dollar, Czech kroner price of a dollar, Polish zloty price of a dollar, Hungarian forint price of a dollar, Russian ruble price of a dollar, and so on. ZAR, South African rand price of a dollar. Here's the yen price of a dollar, Hong Kong dollar price of a dollar. Now, the dollar price of an Aussie, dollar price of a New Zealand dollar, those are both usually direct. So the only direct ones are generally the euro, the pound, the Aussie, and the Kiwi. All currencies have cute names. So the New Zealand dollar is the Kiwi, the Australian dollar is the Aussie. Yeah?
So, direct and indirect prices has me thinking about your example from yesterday, and forgive me, I'm going to go back slightly, but I'm getting tangled up for a second. So you talked about the rate of a euro being $1.60, dollars per 1 euro. When it went down to $1.30 per year, it's like, hey, it's 30% cheaper in Europe versus the United States. But didn't we also discuss the transfer rates? I mean, or the exchange rates? I mean, prices tend to be relative.
So back to this model.
Yeah.
So good question. I'm going to deal with that in the last week in class. This is just the nominal appreciation of a currency, assuming the price, assuming that the menu price of beef tartare in Paris never changed, then it did get cheaper. But what if the beef tartare menu price in Paris did go up from 20 euros to 25 euros? Well, then it's not clear whether.
Yeah, that's what we were saying would happen. So if that rate changed, what we're saying.
So hold off. You're going to force me to get into a conversation on that. I don't have, which is on our next to last lecture is on real changes in the exchange rate, which adjust for both prices and nominal pricing. Hold on, I want to stop. Yes.
Okay. Two things. One is that's a typo of the backslash up there, right? That doesn't mean anything different, right?
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. Whatever they throw in the middle there, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so those three pair formats, they're all saying exactly the same thing.
Yes, exactly. They don't. It's not a division, so yeah, you're right. They're going to throw a space or no space or a character in the middle. It doesn't matter. It's not a division. All right. You okay? We're good? Base currency, quote currency. Here's what it looks like in Bloomberg. So dollar price of a euro, Danish kroner price of a dollar price of an Aussie, Swedish crown price of a dollar, and so on. Japanese yen price of a dollar. Transactions. All right, transactions get really confusing. Like some of them are easy. You're just used to, I'll just divide by or multiply by. But there's a way of getting every transaction in currencies correct. Cross multiplication. All right, something you learned in 6th or 7th grade. If I need to do a transaction, you buy a ticket for the Eiffel Tower for 38.5 euros. How many dollars did it cost me? Well, always just write the first currency down, 35.5 euros. I then need an exchange rate to go from euros to dollars. The only exchange rate that's going to work, all right, the only exchange rate that's going to work is an exchange rate where euros wind up in the bottom, so these cross out, and then make the top one the one that gets carried forward. So the only exchange rate that'll take you from euros to dollars is a dollar over a euro exchange rate. The euros cancel out, and the dollar goes forward. So it must have been $46 to buy that 38 euro ticket. And I'll show you it works on the other way. When you first got to Paris, you bought $150 worth of euros. I'm sorry, $150 worth of euros. How many euros did you get? Well, $150. Whoops. I'm just going to write the same thing, but $150. I need to convert that to euros. So here's the mechanism. Well, the only way it converts is I put dollars down here and it crosses out. So let's just put euros up here, and that goes forward. The euro per dollar exchange rate is not, well, I did put, that should be dollars per euro. Sorry about that. The euro per dollar exchange rate will be 1 over the dollar per euro exchange rate, so I have to do 1 over 120. I can't believe I did that. Please, in your notes, make that change. I don't know why I wrote that. It should be dollar price of a euro. All right. So what exchange rate you need depends on where you start. All right, so let's just do a few more examples. It'll become clear. All right, the shekel price of a dollar is about 3.6. So if you want to buy $150 worth of shekels, say you just hand someone at the airport $150, and the question is, how many shekels do you get back? Well, let's just do this. $150 times, well, I need an exchange rate to give me shekels. This has to be a dollar, which means this has to be a shekel. Oh, this is the shekel per dollar exchange rate, so I'll just multiply times 3.6. That'll kill the dollars off and bring the shekels forward. Good? On the other hand, you buy a falafel for lunch in Tel Aviv, it cost you 30 shekels. How many dollars did it cost me? Well, I just need to multiply times a dollar over shekel exchange rate. So the dollars go forward. The dollar over shekel exchange rate will be 1 over the shekel per dollar exchange rate. If you do that, you will never get a transaction wrong.
So making this with the nomenclature of the 3 letters. So for example, the 3.6, if that would be written.
All right, let's do a poll. So it could be written. What's the shekel 3-character code? I don't know. INS. ILS. So is it this or this? Which one is it? Who's voting for number 1? Is this exchange rate this character code or that character, first or second character codes? All right.
I'm going to top.
All right, so literally, this is the price of one what?
$1.
It's the price of $1 quoted in shekel.
So
Shekel price of a dollar. The first code tells you what you're about to get the price of. You're about to get the price of $1 quoted in shekel, so it's USD ILS. And if you Google USD ILS, the exchange rate will pop right up probably. Don't even try it for me, but that's how I get my exchange rate. I just get the character code. Usually if you just, ILS probably won't work because it's not, no. Yeah, there you go. What? Yeah, you could flip them once you're there and change the 1 under shekels or the 1 under.
Put the actual number in, like you could say I have.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that does that as a converter in there. Yeah.
Do we have to convert our money to shekels when we go to Israel?
Yes.
We do?
Yes. I'll show you how in the next lecture. All right. So, just some more practice here. How do I go from yen to dollars? Multiply times a dollar over yen exchange rate, so the dollars cancel out. How do I go from dollars to pounds? Do a pound over dollar exchange rate so the dollars cancel out and I wind up with pounds. All right, how do I go from Peruvian Nuevo Sol to Chilean peso? Well, okay, 5,000 sol, and I want to get pesos. Oh, I just need our sol down here, so that crosses out, and I'll just put Chilean peso up there. Oh, this is the Chilean peso price of a sol, so I'll just use that. People freak out when I don't put dollars in the equation. All makes sense as long as there's a dollar in there. But don't give me that Brazilian real price of a Chinese yuan. But that's the only way it's going to save your life is knowing cross multiplication.
So this is the thumb rule is the end product unit, dollars, shekels, whatever, right, is always the first code.
Second code.
It's open book, open notes.
That's completely different.
All that chemistry's gonna pay off.
I was just thinking, watch your units.
The EUR USD is the dollar price of a euro. So the second one is always the actual quote. All right, here's what we're going to write. Here's what we're going to write in your notes. Let's all agree that this is a latte. Let's all agree that this is equal to $3.30 per latte. All right? That's how you write the dollar price of a latte.
You could also think about it. It's counterintuitive if there's a division sign there.
Yeah, so this looks worse because that's actually not that. It's actually the opposite of that. But that's the way they write it a lot. I hate remembering rules that are counterintuitive because then you have to remember it's counterintuitive. All right, we good? We good? Rachel, you good? All right. Just making sure, Rachel. Oh my God. See, you're in advanced class. So I don't do this for every class. Cross rates. Oh my God.
There's a 2002 date on this slide.
Really?
There's a what?
I'm just kidding.
All right. So, Chilean peso selling for 700 pesos per dollar. Peruvian sol is selling for 3.5 sol per dollar. Oh my God. How many sol would you receive if you sold 10,000 Chilean pesos? That's cruel. Two ways to solve this problem. This happens if you travel a lot, go to more than one country, and you wind up with another currency, and you have to sell it for the other currency, and so you're selling euros and buying pounds or something like that. So here's how you can either do this. There's two ways to do this. You can do a two-step process or a one-step process. So the two-step process is if you have two currencies, they're not quoted in dollars, but you show up in an American airport. You could literally, and you're trying to sell one and buy the other currency. You could just sell one, buy dollars, use the dollars to buy the second currency. So one way to solve this, if I want to go from pesos to sol, I can just pretend I sell the pesos and I get dollars, and then I sell the dollars and I get sol. So if I sell 10,000 pesos, how many dollars do I get? Dollar over pesos. Peso cancels out. That's 1 over 700. Because it's 700 pesos per dollar, that'll give me $14. I then sell $14 and I figure out how many sol would I get. Well, to go from dollars to sol, I need a sol over dollar exchange rate. Therefore, it must be the 3.5 sol per dollar. Therefore, the answer must be 50. I can exchange 10,000 pesos for 50 sol. Or you can do a one-step process and just try to figure out what the cross rate is. So let's think about this. How do I go from pesos directly to sol? The only way is to use this exchange rate right here. I need a sol per peso exchange rate, right? To go from pesos to sol, I just need to get peso down here and sol up here. How am I going to do that is just fill in the blanks with it, some other third currency. If I take sol over peso, well, if I can just take the sol over dollar exchange rate times the dollar over peso exchange rate, the dollars will cancel out and I will get a sol per peso exchange rate. So the sol per dollar exchange rate is 3.5. The dollar per peso exchange rate is 1 over 700. So actually the sol per peso exchange rate is just 3.5 over 700. And I can just use that to get 50 directly. I will give you one cross rate on the exam, just in case everyone gets everything else right. You can either do a two-step process where you trade into the dollar first and then out of the dollar, or just try to figure out what that cross rate is.
Now, in real life, if you do a double exchange, you will lose money, right? Because
You're going to go to the next slide. You'll get screwed twice by the banks. Yeah. With the bid-ask spread. Yeah. All right, currency appreciations. Are we okay? This is just basic transactions going from one currency to another, especially if both currencies are foreign. You're going to need to do a cross rate. Any questions? You good? All right, appreciations. Oh my God. Appreciations are like the easiest thing we could ever do in the world, right? It's like fifth grade stuff. However, like new minus old over old, right? The percent change formula, price of milk went from $1 to $1.10. Oh, $1.10 minus $1 over $1, it's a 10% increase. That's pretty straightforward. New minus old over old is the percent change, which is exactly the same thing. This is exactly true with currencies too. However, what's going to screw things up? It's the damn indirect exchange rate thing. Like, how do I get a percent change when things are quoted the other way? Right? If milk goes from $1 to $1.10, it's clearly it went up by 10%. But what if you're quoted the milk price of $1? How do I know what the percent change in the price of milk was? All right. So here's the basic idea. This is just new minus old over old is the percent change of a good. You good? You'll get a percent change of anything. If the currency is a direct quote, dollar per milk, dollar per latte, dollar per euro, just use the percent change formula and you will get the percent change of the currency, which will also tell you how much more expensive the goods are. However, all right, so that's going to give you what that's going to give you is the percent change of that base currency, or sometimes I call it the denominator currency. So if it's dollar per euro, right, $1.20 per euro, that's my base currency. I can also call that my denominator currency. It'll give you the change in price of the denominator or base currency. However, what if it's peso per dollar? If I do the percent change formula, what's the answer going to give? What's that tell me, that number? If I do the percent change formula on the peso per dollar exchange rate, what is it telling me? It's the percent change in the value of what? $1. It's not telling me about the peso directly. So here's where I lose a few people. New minus old over old is a percent change formula for a direct currency. How would I do it for an indirect? Well, one way to do it is to take 1 over the new minus 1 over the old over 1 over the old. Just flip every exchange rate and make them direct. And you could do that. So you want to know how much the peso appreciated? Just divide by 1 every time. 1 over the new price over 1 over the old price over 1 over the old price, right? However, it just so happens mathematically that that is also equal to old minus new over new. And at some point, you'll get tired of flipping every exchange rate, and you'll just remember that rule. So if I want to know the appreciation of the euro, just take new minus old over old with the new value and what it was last year over what it was last year. But if I want to know the appreciation of the peso, take old minus new over new, because it's the same thing as if I flipped them all and did the normal percent change formula. Did I kill anyone? Anyone dead? Yeah, you're dead? Brian, you're dead? You got like 5 kids under 5 free at home. Right? You should be dead. I think it's physically impossible how many children you have at home. So, say the exchange rate went from, the euro exchange rate went from $1.50 to $1.65, which it did 6-7 years ago. Well, if it went from $1.50 to $1.65, new minus over old, the euro just appreciated 10%. Which means my Paris hotels and my beef tartare just got 10% more expensive, as long as the menu price didn't change in Paris. However, what about someone from Paris coming to Manhattan? For them, things are not 10% cheaper, which doesn't seem right, but it's absolutely true. An American beef tartare is 10% more expensive in Paris, but for a Parisian, what do we sell? A slice of pizza is not 10% cheaper in America, it's 9% cheaper. If I flip the exchange rates and try to figure out, well, what about the price of the dollar? I just take the euro price of a dollar. 1 over 165, 1 over 150 over 1 over 150, just new minus old over old, let's do the euro price of a dollar. You will get 9% appreciation, but that's the exact same thing as old minus new over new. So for a European, America's 9% cheaper, but for an American, Europe is 10% more expensive. And it has to just do with percent changes. So the difference from going from 3 to 4 is different than going from 1/3 to 1/4. That's all, it's just on a percent change basis. That's all it is. It's just a mathematical fact. As a percent change is different. You okay? So this is telling you what happened to the price of a dollar. This is telling you what's happened. I'm sorry, the price of a euro. This is telling you what happened to the price of a dollar. Now let me see.
Can we walk through the USD one again at the bottom?
Yeah. Actually, let's do the next one. I think it's better to do an indirect quote, and then we'll see if that makes more sense. All right, so say the Chilean price of a dollar went from 600 to 700. That's the quote. Now, what's weird is people say, hey, what's the price of a peso? Oh, it's 600, now it's 700. That's not really the price of a peso, is it? It's actually the price of what? A dollar. It's actually the price of, you're quoting the price of a dollar, not the price of a peso. So what's going on here is the price of a dollar went from 600 pesos to 700 pesos, even though we say it's the price of the peso. It's not. But that's just the way the world works. I can't change it. So if I take new minus old over old, 700 minus 600 over 600, it's telling me about this. It's telling me about what happened to the dollar, not the peso. Because that is the price of a dollar. So it looks like the dollar just appreciated 16%. All right, so Chileans coming to America, things are 16% more expensive. All right, now Brian, if I want to talk about what happened to the peso, the Chilean peso, well, one answer is I could have just, from the very beginning, convert everything to direct. 1 over 700 and 1 over 600. And I can say, okay, the new minus old exchange rate, 1 over 700 minus 1 over 600 or 1 over 600. Like, right, this looks the same. I just flip them. And you can do that, but at some point you get tired of doing that. You just remember, oh, well, mathematically, it's the same thing as old minus new over old. So either way you do it, you're fine. And actually, for the first exam, you probably want to maybe, well, whatever way you want to do it. Some people are like, I just want to convert everything to dollars, and then if they ask me for percent change, I know how to do it. But at some point, you're like, it just seems like 3 extra steps. All right, so in this example, when the Chilean peso went from 600 to 700, that's actually an appreciation of the dollar by 16%. So goods are 16% more expensive in America for Chileans. However, goods in Chile are 14% cheaper for Americans. Okay? Brian, does that help? I think
that's what tripped me up was, actually this, I'm good now. Okay. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. And by the way, here's just proof, right? Say the exchange rate went from 600 to 700, which means the dollar's up 16% and the peso's down 14%. Let's remember that. Dollar's up 16, peso's down 14. I just want to show mathematically that, say, a hotel in Santiago is 130,000 pesos per night. That means at the old exchange rate, it would have cost you $216. Just 130,000 pesos times 1 over 600. I just saved some space and just divided it there. With the new exchange rate, It'd be 130,000 pesos times 1 over 700. That's $185. That difference in price from $216 to $185 is exactly 14% cheaper. That's why you actually need to know how to do that calculation. If you're outsourcing to China, right, and you have a fixed wage contract, so all the prices in yuan are fixed, but you heard that the yuan just appreciated 14%, you will pay exactly 14% more dollars for that labor. And why do I get so hung up on whether it's 16 or 14? Well, I can't just change the sign, Gaddis, right? Well, yeah, 16, 14, what's the difference? 10, 9? Well, depends what your profit margin is, right? If your profit margin is 3%, right? The currency just changed 5%. It makes a difference whether it's 5 or 4.5. You need to know the exact value. So you need to know how to do a percent change in the formula. You can't just do one formula, change the sign, and assume it's the same for the other currency. They're always a little bit different. Yeah, like the euro is 10% appreciation of the dollar, 9% depreciation of the euro. 16% appreciation of the dollar, 14% appreciation or whatever, depreciation of the peso. And I did the other example. Well, from a hotel in New York that costs $400 a night, under the old exchange rate, they paid 240,000 pesos. Under the new exchange rate, they paid 280,000 pesos. That exactly is a 16% increase. So 16 and 14 is exactly the percent changes in the formula, assuming the prices in that currency didn't change. In other words, like the hotel price didn't change on the internet, right? That stayed the same. Brian wants to say, well, the only reason that should happen is the price changed, but that is another option. He's very advanced. All right. There's a little bit of mathematical shorthand for you, too. This is taking our formulas we just learned this morning, or when was that? This morning, a little bit last night. And if you want to forecast what's going to happen to a currency just on interest rates or inflation, we can just rearrange this formula a little bit. I did it here, but it's always easier to see when it happens. This is purchasing power parity. The new exchange rate is the old exchange rate. I'll just do it here. The new exchange rate is the old exchange rate times relative inflation. You okay? What if I divide both sides of this equation by today's exchange rate? Right, you're allowed to do that, by the way. Do to both sides, it's fair. So, if I divide both sides by today's exchange rate, I wind up with this. The new exchange rate over the old exchange rate is the ratio of inflations. New divided by old, that is actually 1 plus an appreciation, right? If the gallon of milk, or a quart of milk, goes from $1, the old value, to a new value of $1.10, right? That is $1.10 minus $1 over $1, right? That's a 10% increase, right? Okay with that? But if I just take new over old and do 1.1 over 1, it tells me 1 plus the appreciation. So it just so happens that this side of the equation could be interpreted as just 1 plus the appreciation. All right? So I can forecast what's going to happen to a currency by simply taking 1 plus the inflation over 1 plus the inflation minus 1. I've lost all of you, but let me give you the easy answer to this. Right? What if I just told you that inflation in US is 4%, inflation in Euroland is 2%. What's going to happen to the euro?
More valuable versus the dollar.
Is the euro going to appreciate or depreciate?
Appreciate.
The euro.
Appreciate.
Right, it's going to be one of those, right? Is inflation good or bad for currency?
Bad.
So what's going to happen to the dollar?
Less valuable.
Dollar is going to go down, right? Euro is going to go up. Roughly how much is the euro going to go up by? It's going to roughly go up by 2%. That's the model, right? This little equation says that the appreciation of the euro, which means the dollar price of the euro, is going to be equal to, which is about 2%. That's all this model is. Now, the boardroom math is just take the difference. Now, it's going to go up by about 2%. The exact value is going to be this, which is going to be really close to 2%. That's all this model is. So, if you're told, oh, and by the way, it doesn't matter if I use I's or R's. Same thing, because we assume differences in R's are just differences in I's. Natasha.
When do exchange rates change, like, is there a time period by which one has to announce their changes, or can they just do it anytime?
Okay, so it's a good question. When would this actually happen? That's a really complicated question. Because one is, there's a million forecasts of inflation, and who do you believe? So you have to have some kind of consensus that inflation is going to be higher in one country versus the other. So let's pretend that kind of happened somehow. Somehow all the greatest economists in the world came together at a big conference and announced the inflation levels. So the question is, well, how long would it take to get to that value? And then it's just kind of, well, I don't know, how long does the market take to absorb information? It could be, in that case, it could be immediate. Like, oh, it's a big announcement. But what happens in the real world is kind of data starts flowing in and maybe an idea that inflation is going to be higher, so it just kind of depends how the information comes out. It's like, why wouldn't a stock go up immediately today because Elon Musk said something about Tesla? They don't really believe him, I'd like to see more proof, but maybe they're just right in the end. So it's just a free market, it's supply and demand, so I don't know, how long does it take for that information to go? Do you believe the economists that just published it? Do you believe the government that just published it? So it's a really complicated answer, and it kind of gets back to Doug's, like, well, how exchange rates change? I don't know. It's a huge market where there's a million people trading it, and is the information credible, or are other things going on? I'm sorry to say that, but
I'm just trying to see if there's like a month, like every month I can check to see the changes.
every minute you can check to see the change.
Okay.
But it's being affected by so many other things, you have no idea how inflation affected it. Right? The peso's down last week or this week because of the earthquake. All right, well, what if they also had an announcement of inflation that day? I don't know. And on balance, that's just what happened. Exchange rate. All right, so U.S. interest rates are 3%. Mexican interest rates are 12%. When you see that and it says interest rates, think inflation. So this model assumes that differences in interest rates are simply differences in inflation. So when you see this, the first thing you should think of is, oh, that must be because Mexico has 9% more inflation. That's the connection. So what's going to happen to the peso? They have 9% more inflation. It's going to go down by about how much? 9%. This is not rocket science, right? However, it's actually 8. Because 1 plus the U.S. interest rate over 1 plus the Mexican interest rate minus 1 is 8%, not 9%. All right, well, it's close. And I got the sign right, and so I must have got it right. Now, here's the big question. Like, how do I know to put the U.S. interest rate up here and the Mexican one down here? That's the hard part of this problem. And the answer to the question is, what did I ask? Did I ask you about what's going to happen to the peso, or did I ask you about what's going to happen to the dollar? I asked about the peso. How would you write the quote of a peso? If you want the price of a peso, that is the price of a peso, right? So, if that's the price of a peso, dollar over peso. So just, if you're asked about a currency, right, that's your base currency, put it down here. The quote currency goes up here. So if you're asked about, it's not going backwards, it's dead. If you're asked about what happened to the euro, but that's a direct quote currency, again, just put the dollar up front, up top, and the euro on the bottom. If you're asked about the peso, put the dollar up top, put the peso on the bottom. But what if I'll give you a tough one. What if the Chilean peso inflation or interest rates are 5%, and the Brazilian real is 3%. So the Chilean peso is 5%, Brazilian real, interest rates or inflation, doesn't matter which one, are 3%. What currency's gone down? Which one?
The Chilean.
That's going down, that's going up. So if the question is, what is the expected appreciation of the Chilean peso? Well, how would I write the price of a peso? It would be the Brazilian real price of a Chilean peso. Right? If you want to know the price of a peso, it would be the Brazilian real price of a peso. So just make sure that it is. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get some space here. Sorry. And let me change colors to start. All right. So the question is, what is the percent change or expected percent change in the value of, pick one, peso. All right, based on this math, we think the peso is going to go down by 2%. How I'd write the price of a peso would be Brazilian real over peso would be the price of a peso. Anyone have that math? It's going to be like between negative 1.9 and 2.1%. I don't know. $1.98. Is that right?
There's no one.
Yeah, it's 0.0198, which is 1.98%, right? You got 0.0198, they said?
It's 1.9.
If you got point.
You need to.
I'm sorry, minus one. I'm sorry, the minus one.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, minus one. So is it 1.98 or 1.9?
1.9.
1.9. Okay, thank you. So that's the only trick. Now, you don't have to worry about it too much. Before you do a problem like this, just predict the sign first. I know the number's got to be negative because they have higher inflation. And then the answer, the answer is going to, it has, you're smart enough and you have an equation. You know it's one of these two things, right? You know it's one of these two things. This turns out to be, I don't know, 2.0% or something like that. So you know it's going to be one of these two answers. However, you're smart enough to know inflation bad for currency. Peso go down. I got +2. Oh, shit. Oh, it must be this one. So that's probably going to help you out for the first exam. And remember, interest rate, when you see interest rates, this model assumes that means inflation. Yeah.
And so the non-caveman way of checking it is just, you're saying that it's always going to be, let me think of this, because you're always talking about it in terms of the Brazilian real price of the peso. Is that right?
Yes. I want to know what happened to the peso, so I need an exchange rate that looks like this. All right, now this may kill you. All right, all we've been talking about are spot transactions. Hey, what's the exchange rate today? When I Google the exchange rate, you get a spot rate. All spot rate means is a fancy finance word, mean immediate delivery, near immediate delivery. I want to buy it now or in the next 3 days. However, you can call a bank, like I said, and say, hey, what's the price of the dollar price of a euro for a year from now? And they'll say, oh, you can do 107 1 year from now, or 110 or 120. That's a forward price. If you go to Bloomberg, you say, what is the 1 year forward? You'll get all the banks lined up. Here's the best prices for 1 year prices on exchange rate. All right, those are called forward rates. Now, in a perfect world, those would just be perfectly quoted to you in the exact exchange rate. Like, oh, the spot price is 112. The 1 year forward price is 113. That would be a nice world to live in. But the finance weenies don't do that. They quote it in pips. Not Gladys Knight and the Pips. Is it Gladys Knight and the Pips? Or is that Bips? Or what is that? Is that Pips? Pips, yeah. So it's Pips, but Pips stand for price points. So what's confusing, if someone says, hey, I see the euro selling for, say, 112.33 today. All right, that's the spot price. And they'll say, hey, what price will you give me for 1 year from now? Here's what the answer you might get. I can do 5. 5? What the hell does that mean? I can do 5 pips. What do you mean 5 pips? On a currency. Every currency is quoted in either 2, 3, or 4 decimal places. The euro is quoted in 4 decimal places. So, this is the lowest decimal place quoted in a currency in the spot price. So, one way of thinking about this, the price today of a euro is $1.12, 3 and 3 pips. So this is the lowest unit. So if someone says I can do 5 extra pips for 1 year delivery, that means they'll do 112.38. You okay? But what gets confusing is that it's a 2 decimal place currency. You're talking about that second place, not the fourth. So this is the way the world works in finance. They quote things in pips. So, what if the euro is selling for 125.46 bid? We'll talk about bid and ask in a minute. And 125.78 ask. That's the price that they'll buy and sell currencies. And they say, well, what's the 1 year rate? Well, I can do -49, -40 for bid and ask. What they're quoting are pips, price points, to subtract or add to the spot price. Now here's where it gets nasty. If it's 49 pips, you need to subtract from this price right here. All right, the 49, you have to line it up. You literally have to line it up. What that means is this must line up with this, and this must line up with this. So I'm going to right justify these two things. There's my spot price. There's my 49 pips. So to communicate the full quotation, I have to actually subtract 0.0049, which means the forward price is 124.97. That's how they communicate prices, with pips. If you ask why, it's two logical reasons. One is it's just more efficient. Right? You're on the phone, you're trying to trade currencies. Hey, what can I do for a year? I can do 49 pips, discount or something like that. Versus, it's 112.497, right? It's just, and you get automatically, and you're used to dealing with that every day, so it just makes sense. Oh, this bank will do 49 pips. Can you do 48 pips? Okay, done. Right? So it's a shorthand. The other theory is finance is not hard. They're not particularly bright people in the finance industry, but they make tons of money. More than engineers that actually know stuff. So how do you make money when you don't really know a lot of stuff? You make up like a fake language and make things superficially complicated for the rest of the world to justify your high salaries. That's my view. I mean, you're just buying and selling stuff. You're doing nothing that interesting in finance, but hey, I can do those euros at 112.23 today and 4 pips for next week delivery, and I'll give you 25 pips on a month, and like, oh my God, they're doing like something complicated there. We're give them $300,000 a year for that job. So it's probably a little both. All right, so that's a single currency. Basically, just right justify the pips. Just right justify the pips, and then fill in with the leading zeros. Does that make sense? You okay? All right, here's a 2 decimal place currency. The yen is selling on the bid at 78.45 in the spot, 122 pips on the 1 year. Okay, well, let me just right justify 122 against the last decimal place in the spot, and then fill in wherever that decimal place lays. So I must have to add 1.22. So what they're telling me is the forward price is 79.67. All right, now I do want to tell you that I have taken this out of the lecture at some points in my life, but I've added it back 2 years ago. And the only reason I added it back is, where'd you go? Is if you actually do Google an exchange rate, say what I want the USD JPY. Isn't that right? I want the JPY price of $1. All right, so that is the exchange rate, right? It's, do I have internets? Yes, I do. Maybe not. All right, so that's 107. But if I ask for forward rates, and I go to a website, say first one, that's what you'll see. It's all in pips. So I'm not just doing this. I mean, I used to think that, well, I'm just doing it. You don't really know that. But actually, if you want to actually see what the yen is selling for a year from now, based on the information you have access to, if you didn't know this, you'd have no idea. So you go through this entire class of how to hedge an FX exposure, and your first step is you can't even figure out what the price is 1 year from now. So these are all pips. All right. This is the spot price up here. Here's the spot price of the yen. This is for overnight delivery, second night delivery, 1 week delivery, but they're all in pips. So 1 year is 204 minus 204 pips, minus 204. So 204, I have to add 2.04 or subtract 2.04. That's the only reason I have to show you this, because that's the way the world does this. So right now the yen is the forward pips are negative 2.04. Sorry, they said 204. You okay? So it's free. I had to do this. I would love to not take the 20 minutes to do this, but it gets worse. But this is it. This is as worse as it gets. Pips are quoted as fractions of pips. So when I went back to that site, it's quoted at, say, negative 204.29 pips for the forward price. Holy crap. All that means is the 204 is what you write justify. It's 2.04. This is actually the next couple decimal places. So let's see what that looks like. Say it was 122 pips. I would just add 1.22 because I write justified. Anyone have problems with that? All right, well, the next slide says, well, what if it's 122.2 pips? Holy crap. Still write justify the 122. Don't worry about the fraction of a pip. Then throw in that extra precision. What it's telling you is actually the third and fourth decimal places if they had them. So even though this is a 2 decimal currency, they're quoting the forward price in 3 decimals. And if it was 1.22, I'd add another 2 at the end here, and I'd be quoting it in 4 decimals. That's as hard as it gets. How do you know if it's a 2, 3, or 4 character currency? Whatever they quote it in, that's what it is. The spot price, whatever the spot price is quoted in. All right. Or you can just Google how many decimal places in the euro spot, and you'll see it's 4. How many decimal places in the Japanese yen spot? It's 2. Yeah, Brian?
Why did you add here in the previous example you subtracted pips?
I didn't. Oh, because it told you. That's how the bank communicated to you.
Got it.
So this one's getting cheaper for forward delivery. The other one was getting more expensive. Right. So all forward prices could be a discount or premium. So they need to tell you whether it's cheaper or more expensive to buy it next year. All right. You okay with that? It's a little confusing. There's some practice at the end of the lecture. You can kind of look at yourself. The basic trick is whatever the pips are, write justify it to the end of the spot, and then figure out where the decimal place is. In other words, it might be easier to look at it this way. If let me just launch this. All right. So if I were going to do this from scratch, I'd do something like this. Okay, so I'll take this here. So 1.2, well, let's do the hard one. 78.45 is the spot. I know that they're saying add 122 pips. So I'm going to just write justify 122. You okay? Then just fill in the same decimal place. Then add anything to the right. And that's how I get it. So they're giving you fractions of a pip. because that's what that that site I showed you, that's all it shows you, our pips. And actually, once you get used to it, you like seeing it, because you can, like, in 1 second, I went down that line and I say, oh, something's depreciating by 2 points over a year, versus just seeing a bunch of numbers with 4 decimal places, trying to look at it. It's almost like graphing it. It's like just the differences are just popping up. So it is kind of nice to look at it that way. Now here's a friendly Bloomberg page. It actually does both. So here's the spot price. Here are the pips. But hey, if I take the pips from the spot, that's the actual price. That's really nice of you to do that. So some sites do both, but a lot of them don't. All right, so here's more practice. If you had some practice this week, is if I had to subtract 71.45 pips from this number, I would take the 71, line it up to the spot right here. So I'd take 71.0071, lines up with the 4th decimal place right here, and then I'd add the extra 5th and 6th. So these are just more practice problems for you later.
Is there an Excel formula that handles?
No, there's not. No, there's not.
Figure that out.
Yeah. And what also makes trouble, like if you're programming this for your company, you have to actually program every currency, whether it's a 2, 3, or 4 character currency, and it has to be a parameter, so it's hard to program it for that reason. All right. Here's a Reuters screen, and Reuters does the same. They don't show you, so they say that the spot price of the Aussie dollar is 76 cents, and the 6-month delivery is negative 52.5 pips. So this is how the world communicates forward prices. So it looks like the Aussie is 50 pips cheaper in 6 months. So I can buy it today or buy it 50 cents cheaper in 6 months, or 50 pips cheaper in 6 months. So just more practice. All right, so the important thing about this is, one, as I said, if I had to predict an exchange rate, I could use one of these models, but I won't. I'll just get the forward price. The forward price is an unbiased forecast of a future exchange rate. And when I get that, and how I'm going to read those forward prices are probably something that looks like this or something that looks like this, and you just need to be able to convert it. I can then use those quotes also to hedge my foreign currency exposure or forecast my cash flows. All right, if I knew that these are the exchange rates, these are the forward exchange rates for the next year, okay, I would use those to forecast my cash flows for my company. I can also use those, call my bank and say, I'd like to lock into those exchange rates. All right, I'm expecting to get €1 million 6 months from now. Can you guarantee me $1.47, $1.45 today? Actually wind up, if you're selling euros, you get $1.47, $1.45 today. And you just say, can we sign a contract? Yeah, done. Now you no longer have foreign currency exposure. You're done. 6 months from now, you deliver them €1 million, they will deliver you $1.47 million. All right, yeah.
So I was reading this article about Overstock.com, and they're accepting Bitcoin. So what they're doing now is they're taking half of the Bitcoin. They were initially converting 90% of Bitcoin into dollars, and now because of the appreciation, so-called appreciation, now they're actually converting half that and letting the rest ride.
Yeah. I used to have a little section actually in the last lecture on cryptocurrencies, but it was just too confusing. All right, so yeah, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, it's just another, well, I don't know what it is. It's sort of a currency. It's serving as a global currency, but I don't know if it's a fad or if it's real. It's just another currency. That's not real.
Hedging their bets.
What?
They're trying to hedge their bets on so-called appreciation.
Yeah. All right, so that's it. Let's. We got 10:49. Can you come back at 11 and we'll do the last one? All right. Let's try to start right at 11, okay? So I think I have an hour. Get you out of here now.
Get us out of here?
Yeah, we get out of here.
I want to do you a favor. Get me to a football game by 3:00.
long as I'm not my fault, it's okay.
Yeah.
12:30 is my time.
I'm just gonna ask, so when we do the quizzes, no problem, or
So,
lunch break.
around 10,000
lectures, so I only have one question for my kids. Remind me to ask that after.
then you wanna go
probably
in chronological?
2, 3, like Friday, Saturday.
The forecast is for the dollar to appreciate over time.
Okay, so and it does never stop. So they will guarantee. So 30 years, they'll guarantee that.
They are,
30 years.
well, I don't know the source of this website, but in theory, if this is represents what banks are willing to trade, I would take,
That first one.
so yeah, minus 556.33.
Yeah, okay.
So that would be,
So the 56.83.
well, no, it's 56.83, so it would be.
Good.
56.83. So yeah, plus.
Yeah, I just made a quick,
So one,
we're all in the same font, change the
160.
color, and
So it's always just taking
or so
that's
except it isn't, I just made one of
Well, it's
those.
just, forget this.
Yeah,
right.
You just write justify that, 568.
Email.
against that.
Thank you, I think 56.83.
Yeah. So
Actually, it'd be 56.83.8101.
right. So if they gave us 3 numbers, then it would just be right justified to
Yeah. It'd be, yeah.
5.6.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Although be careful, I have run into trouble on this website of
Yeah.
this yesterday. One of the indirects was absolutely wrong. Yeah. So now, because I used to use the website all the time, but I was looking at, the lecture we're going to do next week, I actually converted with Bloomberg. It was all wrong. It was the Aussie dollar. Sending the Aussie was like not depreciating, but I went to Bloomberg and it was depreciating. So, the pound. To the pound. GBP on that website. So do like
USD GDP.
GBP USD forward. GBP.
Oh, I'm sorry.
USD forward. You good? You go to that website.
Yeah, because I posted to Word, and I saw where there were 2 areas and 2
Yeah, I mean, that's what we gotta be careful of is take that out, put it more, because, because one of the things I realized is that 1.5. It doesn't do the same kind of correct, like it doesn't change the fact. I mean, because I just always write something and then mention like when it comes like that's right or wrong.
So I did this morning, I took it out,
0.015.
and I put it in order, and then I went back.
But that's actually wrong. It's
And
actually,
after all-
they have actually 7% higher interest rates, so it's actually expected to appreciate by 7% a year, so it's actually, it's just wrong.
It is wrong.
So now I'm nervous because I used to talk to the use this, but then you need to go over it. But if you actually just Google what the interest rates are in the pound, you'll notice that they have a 1-year treasury of 7%, we have 1%. So it just didn't make any sense why it's only changed by 1%. So, okay.
No, I mean it's at least you understand it.
Yeah. Okay, I bring that up in the next one lecture. I'm like, hey, can you use that?
Is this the playbook or is this the,
What, you're fucking.
yeah.
He's got so many documents and I can't keep track of them all.
That's definitely the lesson of the year.
I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
It's the first initial and his
Yeah.
last name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. First initial, last name at psu.edu?
Yes.
Yeah. So everybody's done with, the rental? I heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll drop that now.
Cool, cool.